All right, so everyone can hear me, I think, all right. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Jeff and others, for inviting me to participate in this discussion. I've been Executive Director at ABET for just over 4 years, and actually my very first ASEE conference that I attended, I had the opportunity to engage with the Engineering Technology Dean's Council, and got a lot of good feedback, as you would imagine. But it was a very good experience, and I think in many ways, especially within ABET, there's been a lot of progress in different aspects of what we do and how we support that field and the many disciplines that are in engineering technology. So what I'd like to do today is really just kind of talk about a couple things and maybe plant some seeds for further discussion as we go through the panelists, and then have time afterwards for questions and answers. But I really wanted to focus on who ABET is, because I think ABET is in a very unique and rich position to bring together a lot of the discussion, a lot of the issues, a lot of the items that are associated with education, certainly engineering technology education, as well as industry participation, what the engineering or the engineering technologist, for that matter, should look like in 2020 and beyond, and those sorts of things. So I'd like to talk about our organization. You may know about us or you may not, but certainly I think that would be a good thing. I'd also like to talk about our activities and how we're engaged, not just within the United States, but globally, because many of the challenges that we face as a society, as citizens of the world, really are global challenges, and we all play a particular role in that, a special role, and I'd like to talk about our organization and how we're set up to do that. I'd also like to make mention that I know that I heard during the break that there were a lot of discussion items about ABET this morning, and unfortunately I wasn't here to hear them all, but I know that there are many volunteers out there in the audience that were quite qualified to step up and answer them or participate in that discussion. So thank you for all of those folks that did that. All right, so who are we? And by the way, I'm going to stick to 14 minutes now on my clock, so no problem. I can get through that. I can talk very fast. But first of all, we're nonprofit, non-governmental, formed in 1932. Okay. As this Engineers Council for Professional Development. And we were set up really to promote the profession and so forth, but quickly thereafter really focused on quality assurance and accrediting programs. We do only accredit programs, not institutions, degrees, or courses. That's some confusions out there lots of times about what we do specifically. At all three levels, associates, bachelors, and masters, predominantly at the bachelors and associates, but there are some master programs out there that seek ABET accreditation. It's a peer review process. What we do in terms of evaluation, that's critical, I think, to how we do things, the help that we can provide programs, as well as the quality of the service that we provide. So if you have an electrical engineering program or electrical engineering technology program, you'll have someone from IEEE who will be there doing that review. Same thing with the computing sciences and any of the other disciplines that ABET is involved in evaluating. We get volunteers from our 33 technical societies. I'll show you who those are shortly. But that's one of the key aspects, I think, of bringing in industry and formulating what should engineers, technologists, what should these disciplines, fields, what should they look like in the future. Our professional societies are key in that. Also, just quickly, we're recognized. We have an accreditor ourselves, so we have someone who accredits the accreditors, and that's CHIA here in the United States, and we're actually up for recognition this year. Okay, so here are our member societies, and I'm sure you'll notice or you'll recognize one or several up there. And we have the new SME logo, so I'm sure that'll make Mark happy. But these are our members. You can't be an individual member, of course. We're a federation, actually, of technical and professional societies. And we look to these societies to really set the standards, the expectations for what the profession expects. Okay, so again, I come from IEEE, so I'll use electrical engineering as an example. We look to IEEE to tell us what should graduates of programs, whether they're engineering programs, engineering technology programs, or whatever they are, what kind of skill sets and knowledge should those graduates have so they can successfully enter the workforce. And that's really the key aspect of what our societies provide. So you'll see them up there. Some are large, some are small, but and we've grown from the original 7 now up to 33. And anyway, they're all happy for the most part. So how are we organized? I'm not going to bore you with wiring diagrams, but there's a few things that I thought I would point out here that are key to some of our discussion today. And if you look, we have a board of directors, and everybody has those. They've set our strategic vision and mission and what we ought to be doing. We have the commissions, which I think you're familiar with, but if you're not, we accredit in 4 primary areas: engineering, technology, computing, and applied sciences. And so we're organized to focus on those areas. But if you look there, we have an industry advisory council, an academic advisory council, and a global council, okay? And the global and the academic advisory council are relatively new bodies within ABET. And what that role, and I'll include industry in this discussion, their role is to really advise our board on what are the up-and-coming issues, what should we be focused on, what are the things most critical, okay? And I'm quite happy to say that our Academic Advisory Council, which is only maybe 3 years old now, has been especially successful in helping us guide some of the criteria changes and so forth. And so we have a partnership with academic world, we have a partnership with our Industry Advisory Council, and then of course the Global Council helps us look around the world and that global vision. So our volunteers are key. I lead a staff in Baltimore of about 38 people, but there's well over 2,000 volunteers that really do the accreditation work. As a matter of fact, I'm not involved in any of the accreditation actions at all. I don't have a voice in that, I don't have a vote. It's all up to the commissions and the volunteers that lead that activity. But I think what I wanted to really illustrate here or highlight is the fact that if you look at that piece of that pie, you know, what we'd really like is that, well, I guess in that view it's purple and green. The purple and the green part just kind of be 50-50 or half. Because the purple represents the industry and those industry volunteers, of which I used to be involved with when I was a volunteer for ABET. But if we could grow that, I think would be, you know, the best scenario. Now, we love our volunteers from academia, so don't get the wrong idea, because they're a critical and you know, a key piece of who we are and how we do things. But if we could increase our industry participation through the volunteer corps, I think that would help even integrate industry more in, you know, what we do and the future of you know, engineering education, engineering technology education. I guess I'll just say engineering education, yeah, engineering education. So anyway, that's our makeup. Let me just touch on the global activities, and I talk about global, which includes the U.S., of course. You know, we want to promote quality innovation. We want to allow innovation to happen. I get a lot of pushback that say, hey, ABET stifles innovation, but if you get down into the weeds of the criteria and so forth, I really could build a pretty darn good case that that's not the effect at all. But we really want to stimulate innovation, and you know, obviously, assist in the development and advancement of technical education worldwide. We accredit programs outside the U.S. now, and we accredit lots of programs outside the U.S., and I'll just show you some numbers here shortly. The key thing is it's the same criteria, the same processes, the same set of volunteers, so it really is a global sort of an effort. We don't have special rules for programs that don't reside here in the U.S. Lots of partnerships through memorandum of understandings with other accreditors and mutual recognition agreements, where we kind of build this network of accrediting bodies so that there's increased mobility amongst technical professionals, and a way to kind of set up a set of standards across throughout the world for what engineering graduates, computing graduates, applied science graduates ought to have. And then finally, we're engaged significantly in a lot of, or several important global organizations that allow us the opportunity to know what's going on in different parts of the world, and for them to know what we're doing. These numbers actually have just been updated the 1st of October, and Marianne Weiss back at headquarters is the person that gives this final number. She didn't give them to me yet, so I can't tell you what they are exactly, but pretty close to that. I think we've grown maybe about 100 programs, but you can see well over 3,000 programs, okay, at 659 institutions in 24 countries. That's a lot of programs, that's a lot of evaluation teams, that's a lot of program evaluators going out and looking at content of programs and making sure students are getting the best experience they can in the classroom. You can see the non-US numbers, 324, and I think that's going to be up by about 40 this year, 40 to 50 this year at 64 institutions, and so we're having a significant impact on the global education. And I think this is a real benefit to our member societies in a lot of ways, because basically they're influencing education outside the U.S. in a significant way through their volunteer corps, their participation in ABET, and their ability to help guide the creation and the development and the modification of our criteria. So important to our society, our member societies. I wanted to pull out engineering technology for this particular discussion, of course, and so we look at in our ETAC, we have the 2-year and the 4-year programs, and these are the current numbers, and again, these numbers will change, and they should be posted here momentarily. But if you look at that, 639 programs total, so that's a lot of engineering technology programs, and again, that's the AS and the BS together. At the associate level, 280, in the US, non-US is 30, and I think that's going to increase about maybe a half a dozen, 5 to 6, I think, this year, this cycle, so that will increase. But what's interesting, well, I'll get to that. So new programs. So this is interesting because these are completely new programs. So these aren't programs that have been reevaluated, reaccredited, or so forth, but these are actually new programs, and you'll see the numbers for those outside the U.S. So there are some that are growing, and this is a good thing, because, and I heard earlier this afternoon about the motorsports, maybe engineering technology program being accredited and whatnot, but this is a good sign. We like growth. But there's the flip side of that is there are programs that are terminated, okay? So these are programs, and termination is not a word that we use to describe what we do to programs, by the way. This is what programs do to themselves, okay? They terminate, but there's lots of reasons for that, okay? They could decide that and I know anecdotally there's a few programs that have made the transition from engineering technology to engineering, so they've gone out of ETAC and would seek EAC accreditation. So there's some of those. There are some that, especially at the 2-year level, have decided that they don't have the horsepower or the staff or the whatever to continue to be accredited, and there's some of that. And there's some programs that just go away because there's no longer the demand for them. So it's a combination, but certainly we don't like to see programs fall off. But on the flip side of that, we do see new programs coming in, so that's a good thing. Okay, so if you look outside the U.S., again, these are numbers of a year ago. You can see the steady increase in the level of interest. There's lots of reasons for that, and I don't have enough time to get into all the details, but generally it's a good story. ABET's well respected throughout the world, and people see the value of accreditation, the quality assurance and so forth, and what ABET does, but you can see that steady increase, and we're growing at a fairly good rate. Not quite as steep, but still at a good clip throughout the world. Okay, international agreements, these are MRAs, and I'll just blow through these really, but the idea is that we have these agreements with other accrediting bodies like in Canada and the United Kingdom and Australia and Korea and those kinds of things where we're not actually out there accrediting programs, but they are, and we want to make sure that we are comfortable that we have similar enough systems that we could recognize their graduates as if they came from ABET accredited programs, okay? And that's always important because many of those countries want to export engineers, we need engineers, or there's people going back and forth to work through different global areas and so forth. The one thing I did want to point out, those graduate attributes, that's kind of the key aspect of how this thing works, because these graduate attributes are agreed to sort of standards, I guess, if you will, or criteria that when students leave school at the bachelor's level or whatnot, they'll have certain capabilities, skill sets, knowledge areas, and so forth. And so if you look at those graduate attributes, no matter what our accrediting systems look like, when graduates leave those programs, they ought to be able to demonstrate that they can meet those. And so the graduate attributes, I think, are key, especially when you look at learning outcomes and outcomes-based approach for that's pretty much adopted worldwide now. We get reviewed every 6 years. We're going through that right now with one of our computing accords. This is the International Engineering Alliance, of which we're a member. Washington Accord's the oldest, but the two that really affect the discussion, I think, in this area are the Sydney and the Dublin Accords. The Sydney are the 4-year and the Dublin are the 2-year associate programs. And these are international recognition bodies. And again, this is our formal way of injecting ourselves into the world or the global discussion about these types of programs and what students ought to be able to do. The graduate attributes exist for the Washington Accord. They exist for the Sydney and the Dublin. So there are standards, there are agreements amongst the accrediting bodies. What should students be able to do? And we have a direct influence on that. The other, our other partners obviously have a influence on that, and that is important. Okay, here's the people that are the bodies that are in the Sydney Accord, just as a quick reference. Those are the folks that are in the Dublin Accord. Many of them, as you'll see, are similar. Countries on the left, the accrediting bodies on the right. And I'm happy to say that we affect well over 85,000 students every year come out of ABET accredited programs. I'm quite proud of that. I think we have a tremendous effect on the experience that they have during their education. And so with that, I won't go for questions because I know Mark's up, but hopefully my introduction, at least in what I've done, will maybe plant some seeds for further discussion. But I do think that we're in that unique position because we have our industry partners, we have our academic partners, and we have our global partners. What's important for the future of technical education? Mark?